At Naval Air Station Everett, an old janitor dropped his tools during a storm, and young sailors mocked him. Soaked and silent, he bent to pick them up. That's when his sleeve rolled back, revealing a forgotten tattoo. Minutes later, the Fleet Admiral froze mid-step. What followed turned a ridiculed cleaner into a saluted legend and changed how that hangar would remember respect forever. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The storm came without warning. One moment, the skies above Naval Air Station Everett were calm. The next, dark clouds rolled in fast and low, and within minutes, rain hammered down in sheets. Sailors scrambled across the wet tarmac, shouting orders, tying down equipment, and fighting the wind before it could rip the airfield apart. Up on a tall ladder outside Hangar 3, 72-year-old Thomas Rourke clung to the side of the building, both hands steady on a wrench as he tightened a loose metal shutter that had been banging in the gusts. Then his tool pouch slipped. It clattered down the rungs, bounced once, and slid across the rain-slicked concrete, straight toward the landing gear of a moving Navy jet. The aircraft stopped abruptly. A young technician came sprinting out of the rain, face red with fury. "What are you doing?" he shouted, pointing up at Thomas. "You could have caused an accident." Several sailors had turned at the commotion and were gathering now, muttering under their breath. "He's too old to be working here," someone said. "Liability." Thomas didn't answer. He descended the ladder slowly, his clothes already soaked through. When he knelt to retrieve his scattered tools, the edge of his wet sleeve rode up, revealing an old, faded tattoo on his forearm. 6 numbers, curled symbols, and a pair of wings wrapped around a rope pierced by lightning bolt. A couple of the younger sailors snickered. "What is that, prison ink?" "Looks like something out of a biker bar," another laughed. Thomas didn't look at them. He just tugged his sleeve down again and stood up. But someone else had seen it. Fleet Admiral Halsey had come jogging around the corner, checking on the storm damage. He stopped dead when his eyes fell on Thomas's arm. His face changed instantly. The rain kept falling, thunder rumbling far off, but the Admiral didn't move. He stared at the old man like he'd seen a ghost. He had. The moment hung heavy, heavier than the storm, heavier than the embarrassment still stinging in Thomas's chest. Before anyone could ask what the Admiral had seen, time seemed to pull him backward, decades into a past most had forgotten. Thomas Rourke had once worn the Navy uniform with pride. Back when he was Chief Petty Officer, he'd flown rescue helicopters into blackened ocean skies lit with fire and tracer rounds. He'd pulled drowning sailors from oil-slick wreckage while rotor blades screamed overhead. He'd earned citations, commendations that no one at the base had ever heard about. He had a name once. He had brothers in the sky. But that was another lifetime. After retiring from the service, Thomas built a quiet life. He lived alone now in a small apartment just outside the base. The walls were bare, save for a faded photograph of his old squadron and a neatly folded American flag in a wooden case. In the back of his closet sat a sea bag he hadn't opened in 20 years. Inside a drawer, untouched, lay a box of medals he never mentioned. His wife Margaret had passed 7 years ago. After her funeral, the silence in the apartment grew unbearable. So he returned to the only place that had ever felt like home, not as a sailor, but as a janitor, a handyman. For the past 25 years, Thomas mopped the floors, checked hazard signs, tightened bolts, and fixed the little problems no one else noticed. Most of the young sailors barely spoke to him. Some thought he was just slow. Others assumed he was the kind of man who needed the paycheck and had nowhere else to go. That morning had been harder than most. The station was bracing for an inspection, a visiting admiral due to arrive that afternoon. Tension was high. Everything had to be spotless. Everyone was on edge. Before the storm even touched the base, Thomas was already under fire. At mid-morning, he was on scaffolding outside Hangar 3, tightening a panel. Below him, sailors pushed a fuel cart, weaving around crates and gear. One of them, a petty officer named Brennan, scowled up at him. "Can someone get him out of the way?" Brennan called. "We're trying to work here." Thomas looked down calmly. "Just a minute. I'll be finished soon." "Yeah? Well, hurry up." An hour later, someone noticed a thin scratch on the side of a P-8 Poseidon. The maintenance chief roared across the hangar, demanding answers.
Who was working near this jet? Brennan didn't hesitate. "He was over here earlier," he said, nodding toward Thomas. Thomas looked up from where he'd been sweeping. "I wasn't near that plane, sir." "Well, someone scratched it," the chief barked, "and you're the only one I've seen wandering around all morning." A civilian contractor nearby scoffed. Maybe the Navy shouldn't be hiring old guys to do young men's work. Some of the younger crew chuckled. Thomas didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just moved to another section of the hangar. Then the emergency weather alarm went off. Rain crashed down hard, winds howled. Sailors shouted over the gale, trying to secure aircraft and drag tarps over exposed equipment. That was when Thomas, without being asked, climbed the ladder again, this time to fix a shutter near Hangar 3 that had come loose in the wind. The same shutter from before, and once again his tool pouch slipped from his belt. The technician sprinted over. "You almost ruined everything," he shouted through the downpour. Another sailor added, "Go inside. Just go sit down. You've done enough." Thomas didn't respond. He was soaked, boots heavy with water, hands trembling, not from fear, but from something deeper. The cold didn't bite like those words did. Slowly, he bent to collect his tools. And that's when the sleeve slipped back again. The tattoo. The numbers. The mark. And Fleet Admiral Halsey standing nearby, staring at him as if thunder had struck twice. Thomas straightened, clutching his wrench, ready to disappear back into the hangar. But Halsey didn't move. He stood frozen, the wind tugging at his uniform. Beside him, a young lieutenant named Graves jogged over, holding a tablet above his head. "Sir, the doors in Hangar 2 are still unsecured." "Wait," Halsey said. "Sir?" The Admiral didn't take his eyes off Thomas. "That symbol," he murmured, half to himself. "Only one unit ever used that mark." Graves squinted. "What unit, sir?" The Admiral's voice barely rose above the storm. "The ones who didn't come home." And in his mind, the base disappeared. He wasn't standing in the rain anymore. He was back in 1973, hovering low over a burning ship, smoke curling through the darkness, waves crashing below, and a rescue rope swinging wildly from the belly of a helicopter. And beneath that rope, a soaked flight-suited man, young then, strong, pulling a sailor free from the fire. Thomas Rourke. The vision faded. "Find out who that man is, now," Halsey said, but he already knew. The Admiral crossed the slick concrete, his steps firm and quiet. Sailors paused mid-task. Conversations fell silent. Every head turned as he walked toward the old man holding tools like armor. The technician stepped aside. Brennan straightened, assuming the Admiral was about to dress Thomas down for causing chaos during inspection prep. Instead, Halsey stopped just feet away from him. "Rourke?" he said softly. Thomas turned. "Chief Rourke," the Admiral repeated, with a weight that made the air heavier. Murmurs rippled through the hangar. "Chief?" No one had ever heard the janitor addressed by rank before. Thomas blinked. "Sir?" The Admiral stepped forward and gently pushed back the wet sleeve. He studied the faded ink. The wings. The coiled rope. The lightning bolt. "It is you," Halsey whispered. He turned to the room. "Do any of you know what this symbol means?" No one answered. "This man," he said, "served in Rescue Squadron 12, the Stormhawks." A few older crewmen gasped. "They flew during the Cold War. Helicopter rescue. Deep water. Bad weather. No backup. Missions through hell." He paused. "On October 14, 1973, a Navy chopper went down off the coast of North Vietnam. It was burning. Command said a rescue wasn't possible, that it would be suicide. He looked back at Thomas. But Chief Rourke and his crew went anyway. Into smoke, into gunfire, through conditions that should have killed them all. And because of him, 4 sailors lived to go home. Not a sound came from the hangar. Even the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Then Admiral Halsey raised his hand in salute, and one by one, every sailor in that hangar followed. Thomas stood still, his lips trembling, his eyes glistening. "I was just doing my duty," he whispered. The rain softened, the wind eased. The salute held. Eventually, Halsey lowered his hand. The others followed. And then something remarkable happened. The same technician who had yelled at him earlier stepped forward, face flushed. "Sir, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Thomas met his eyes. "You didn't know, son. It's all right." Brennan came next. "Chief, I blamed you for that scratch. I shouldn't have. It's forgotten."
One by one, they came. Some to apologize, others just to stand quietly, unable to speak. Even the contractor who had mocked his age looked away in shame. Thomas set down his tools. His voice, when he spoke, was steady. "Listen to me, all of you. Always respect people. You don't know their story. You don't know what they have given. Treat everyone with dignity, whether they wear stars or a janitor's uniform." No one argued. Then Halsey stepped closer. "Chief Rourke, there's a new class of recruits arriving next month. Would you speak to them? About courage, about what it really means to serve?" Thomas hesitated. He hadn't spoken of his past in years. "I don't know if I'm the right man, sir." "You are," Halsey said. Thomas looked down at the tattoo, the wings, the rope, the lightning bolt. He nodded slowly. "All right, I'll do it." As the last of the clouds drifted away and sunlight broke across the hangar floor, Thomas Rourke walked the length of the hangar, no longer invisible. Sailors who had ignored him now stood a little straighter when he passed. Some nodded. Others stepped aside in quiet respect. Thomas said nothing, but his small, grateful smile said enough. Because some heroes don't wear their stories on their chests, they carry them in silence. And sometimes all it takes is a storm to remind the world who they truly are.